It is hard to believe that here it is already. November almost. All right, let's get started here. Good morning, everyone. This is Robert O'Neill with the Department of Labor. I just typed up my information here should you need to be able to contact me. The easiest way to contact me is typically through my email address because I don't usually, well, I've been pretty busy lately. All of us has been. So you can still call me if you feel like it, but if you get my voicemail, just leave me a voicemail and I'll give you a call back once I get back into the office and stuff. So I do want to remind everyone of something. You do get an hour and a half credit for this course here. And this presentation is on our website, so you can download it. And I have recommended all along that people download this presentation so when we're talking about it, you can make your own little notes out to the side and stuff. That's a good way of keeping up. There's also a lot of good information on the federal site as well. And you can find some other pamphlets and brochures and stuff to talk to your folks about. We're going to be talking about machine guarding and machinery itself. There's the standard numbers which apply here. Let me ask y'all, how many do you estimate the number of deaths per year due to machine guarding? Can anybody suggest something? And y'all let me know what you think. Ooh, you folks are a little low. Here is the statistics directly from the website, federal website. There are over 800 deaths per year and over 1,800 amputations, lacerations, or crushed injuries, abrasions. And those are quite a bit when you really think about it. And we just had a fatality here in North Carolina where the fork truck rolled over an individual as well. So it's a little surprising that people don't think about machine guarding until it's too late, until something happened and stuff. So we will get started. And I am a non-slide reader, so if you folks want me to read the slides, I'll be glad to, but you need them yourself. So we'll be going through here fairly quick. There's several slides here. Now, let everybody know the definitions are put in the standards so that it will help you interpret the standards for yourself. And keep in mind, there may be only woodworking machinery addressed in here, abrasive wheels, and a mechanical power press or a mechanical power transmission system. But the general requirements apply to all pieces of equipment across the board. So it does not matter that they're not particularly listed in the standards, but we can always use this right here for the general requirements of machinery and stuff. Now the definitions, I've already told you. This particular section here deals with hand and power tools and equipment as well in a general area. I don't know how many of you have ever picked up a book and actually went to the standard and look at it. Please keep in mind that sometimes the federal folks will come out with a letter of interpretation on that particular standard. How many of you are aware how to look it up? A letter of interpretation. All right, Mr. Keith and Lil and Pat's chiming in. Absolutely. It is vital that you understand that when you go to the standards, here's the standard number, and you will see that particular letter in blue. And that means it may have a letter of interpretation that you need to go to and take a look, because there have been many of them throughout the years, and there is a ton of them on the federal site if you look those up. Now, we also do some interpretations. Our standard section does that. So we try to keep people posted on the information that's out there. So a good thing to sign up for is our labor ledger, so you can see stuff going on and everything. Um, there are several brochures on this here will help you identify some of the conditions that may take place. Now, the federal site also has a e-tool learning place where you can click that and get some additional information. And this is the link for that. Many of the standards have e-tools available to them, and you can click those. It goes into saws, presses, and plastic machinery as well. Now, portable power tools and stuff, that's pretty simply. Some accidents have occurred because people have removed the guards on stuff. And then we're going to talk a little bit about portable tools and equipment as well. Keep in mind, there is mechanical, anytime there's mechanical motion or actions taking place, that's typically where the injuries will occur. What would you call the place where an injury could possibly occur under this standard? There's a wording that people use throughout the standards. And I haven't got to it yet, but I'm just kind of curious to see how many. If you're running a piece of equipment and you get close to this or you remove the guard, what do they call that? Yeah, everybody's got that right, absolutely. The point of operation is what it addresses. Whenever there is a point of operation, there's where typically the injuries will take place. Now, I just had an individual ask me last week at a training event I was at about they have a conveyor belt, and on the end of the conveyor belt, they have a unguarded area, and here's the conveyor belt, and it's running in this direction. Here's the walkway over here, so they can walk along the side of there. Well, they have the point of operation where it goes into a piece of equipment is over here, and he asked, I can't guard that because the pieces of material and stuff can't flow through here. What can they recommend to remove that person or employees from the point of operation? And we got a discussion on it. And I told them all you have to do is put up a gate right along here or a line system saying whenever this machinery is in operation, no one is to pass this location. Now, there's where you can post that sign to saying that. And what program will fall into this if they put that sign up there? What's another program that they may have to require in this particular situation? There you go, Mr. Tyler, lockout, tag out. And that's the most important thing. Now, Keith pointed out a interesting thing too, an emergency stop trip line. Some companies run that line along the edge up here, and that way if an individual gets caught in it, they can just yank that line real quick and shut the entire conveyor belt down. And thank you for sharing that, Keith, because that is not in this presentation. But that's another method of keeping the people electronic eye. That's another thing. That's a whole different ballpark when we get into those, because the standard doesn't address any of those. But that line goes, some companies that I've been to actually have a rope going down that conveyor belt as well as what I'm talking about. It's an emergency shutoff, but Keith pointed out some of them have electronic eyes. A lot of pieces of equipment will come with that. And what he's talking about there, I'm going to use this as a mechanical power press. Here's the point of operation. Person standing here in front of it, they have a light curtain up over here or electronic eye going across it, to where if the employee puts their hand or a body part in there, it automatically shuts that piece of equipment down. Now, the standard is very flexible as to the type of devices, like I was just pointing out on that conveyor belt. So these are some of the methods that can be used. Now, in these cases, whenever you're putting in new equipment or anything like that, those should be built within those pieces of equipment as they're installed. A lot of people don't think about that, but sometimes you have to go back and rethink an area. Now, as I mentioned, devices can be put in there, different types, but here's where you can do the location or distance, basically based on that conveyor belt I pointed out a while ago. If people pass that one flag system, then the system needs to be shut down. So they're using distance in that particular situation. And you got these other ones. Now, we'll get into some other ones in just a few minutes. Now, a lot of piece of equipments come with protection. There's actually two on this type of piece equipment. There's one along here, and the other one is along here. But what do you see in the photo? And the photo is a little dark. You can't see it too well. Can anybody see anything might be questionable? Now, there's, all right, Mr. Key, there might be a shaft in there. And where you have to look, yeah, the sign is worn off too, but technically that wouldn't be a major violation. Right along here is where you may want to also focus the point at, because there is a space right here that could possibly become an unprotected area, as everybody's pointing out. Good eyes for everybody on that. Now, here is a vertical saw, basically a bandsaw, and the saw raises up and raises down, and while it's cutting the material. I know the photo's a little hard to tell, but this is the point of operation right here. But you do notice how much of the saw, and this is an older one, is not guarded on each side. There's the band going around it on each side. The problem you're going to have here is a person can get caught or get their fingers or hands within that area. The other thing I want to point out to you on this, and a lot of people don't notice it, and this particular photo is from the federal site as well, but look right along here at where the control box is at for it. You'll notice that it has been damaged over time, so they keep moving the control box closer to the point of operation and stuff. So that's what you need to pay attention to. You got also ingoing nip points and rotating parts that could cause injuries as well. How about this? What do y'all think of this? Now, I will tell y'all something funny about this in a second. You think this is a dangerous piece of equipment? Julie says, absolutely, you're darn right. Pinch point. All right, there you go. This piece of equipment was not guarded for the longest time because of the way it was designed. The place where this is located put this system up in order to prevent a person being able to reach inside there and get pulled into it. These are used to bend steel with in order to bend it into like a tube or something like that. Now, this is a pressure plate. If someone steps on that pressure plate, it also will automatically shut that piece of equipment down. Now, the situation sometimes, though, is you need to test this stuff to make sure it's working properly. Now, you never put yourself in danger or allow an employee to put themselves in danger, but you can easily reach your foot over long enough to press it down and prevent, or not prevent, but to see it basically stop the operation. Some machinery don't stop automatically. It may continue to go through a revolution or something. So those are some of the other hazards that need to be addressed in your lockout tagout program. To say, wait a certain amount of time before you go up there and start taking the guard off or getting within that point of operation piece of equipment. Now here, this little bandsaw, this is a guard on it. You always adjust it up or down based on the size of your material that you're actually cutting. What do you think is one of the other hazards that they don't address, and a lot of people don't think about whenever you're using one of these? Can anybody tell me? Keith, you're right on that. The blade uh, projection. How many times you seen somebody pushing a piece of wood through there and have their thumbs on the edge of the wood pushing it up towards the blade? Many, if you watch your people, they will have a tendency to do that. They'll put their hand or finger up on that material and be right at the edge of that blade, where if it cut through too quickly, it'll take off the tip of their finger, or much worse. And people don't think about that. This should always be adjusted to within as close as possible of the material you're actually cutting. And that's the intent behind that. And the manufacturer's instructions specifically address that as well. The other hazard is I've seen some of these bigger ones than this. The blade that goes around here, if it's in travel mode and there's a person standing over here, that blade hits that table while it's coming down where it broke, then all of a sudden that blade can come off that piece of equipment as well, striking anyone in a nearby area. And it does it fairly quick as well. Most of the time the blade is kept within the cabinet itself, but sometimes it can push out. Now, Jermaine mentioned a very good point about push tools or push um, other blocks to push it in there. Many of us use that on woodworking equipment as well, like the table saws and stuff. Now, there are numerous safety devices out there today. The standard does not cover a lot of these. All right, so you need to make sure people are using the equipment properly. You'll note in this particular photo on the closest bottom, there's two hands that you have to put up there to hold the control in place. Can these be overridden by someone? What do y'all think? Absolutely. I was on one job site where the person was actually smoking a cigarette while they were operating it. Now, the company had a great enforcement policy, but apparently the supervisors were not enforcing it. And that's the consequences that you would typically see where the injuries and stuff take place. And this is what we were talking about a few minutes ago. We had to draw this because we don't have any photos of some of this equipment and stuff. By the way, if anybody ever wants to invite me out to your site, you are more than welcome to do that, especially if you would allow me to get photos of, I don't want just photos of the bad stuff, and I try not to look for that. But I'd like to get some good photos so we can add some good photos to our library here to give some of the examples of what we're looking at. Now, granted, I work for OSHA here in North Carolina. I am a trainer. If you invite me out to your site, I will never be able to discuss anything else with a compliance officer if they're inspecting you. And also, once you get the letter signed, I have to get a letter from you giving me permission to take these photos. You have the option of looking at all photos before I leave your site, and we can delete the ones you want, or we can blur it out, whatever you prefer. But we are still looking for some photos because we had to take our library down about 4 years ago, or our presentations down. But I'm looking for the good stuff y'all are doing. A lot of you are doing good stuff, and that's what I'd really like to put in the presentation to show examples of versus a drawn out one like this. Same way on this here. Julie, I would appreciate that. Shoot me an email. They have to be your photos, and then I can send you the letter that people have to sign and everything. But lady, I would be more than happy to treat you to lunch in those cases as well. But we're trying to get some good ones. What they're talking about here is basically on a person's uh, pull-out devices to keep them from getting inside that point of operation. Anything we can get from you folks, we'd appreciate it. In this particular case, he's got hand restraints on to prevent him from being able to get into that point of operation. Can these be defeated? Absolutely. Many times they don't adjust these properly. And even when we go on site visits and stuff, we see people that can put their hands all the way up there and everything. And we're up there really while we're standing in front of you and stuff. Um, but I do appreciate y'all. If you can help us with the photos, that would be great. Here's another particular situation. There's two hands placed on the machine, one over here and one over here, and we already talked about that. The punching action, but what's another hazard that some of the older equipment may have that you need to be aware of right here? Now, this is a punch press. What can happen with the punch press? It happened to me one time in the Air Force. Scared the crap out of me. There you go, Mr. Michael. When you're pressing down, that part can fly out of there. And let me tell you something, it definitely will. And if it strikes you with enough force, it can actually penetrate your body. So remember, these mechanical power presses can kill you as easy as anything else. And then again, the location, that's the reason these people put this guardrail up, is to put people away from it. We would love to have some additional, and y'all can see there's a lot of wording in this here that we don't really need, but we would like to get some better photos for our presentations and stuff. So mechanical feed systems, sometimes those are automatic. A guy I knew in my younger age used to stack steel in the steel mill down in South Carolina. He would catch a piece and he was required to put it on a machine like this, like this, and he would be standing over here and he would drop them in there and feed them in there as they come down from another person. Well, while he was feeding them in there, two of them got caught together and he lost the tip of his thumb right there when they just pinched it just like that. And he said that he never even realized it did it until he started wondering what all the blood was and everything. So it happened so quick. But there are other types of things that can kill people. And robots are now becoming one of the biggest things that are out there. How many times have y'all been on your work site looking around and somebody's got the gate to where the robot's at open and it hasn't been locked or tagged out? Has anybody ever run across that? Mm-hmm. And that's the reason we're having so many fatalities and serious injuries in the United States, is because of that. Now, here is what we were just talking um, about push sticks and everything. Now, would this be a violation of the standard? Let me ask y'all that. The way you're looking at the photo, would that be a violation of the standard? Tyler, you're right on what you're saying right there about incorporate them into your lockout tagout. Susan says this would be, okay. Keith says yes to no guard. Has anybody ever cut a small piece of wood like this and had to remove the guard? Otherwise, well, gloves wouldn't necessarily be a hazard, but technically, you could argue this point right here. I have a push stick who's cutting a piece of wood, which is very small. You can see it on the blade side. And I'm using a push stick. I'm keeping my hand out of the point of operation because the point of operation is right here. If I can't get to that point of operation, good luck, because I'll see you in court, basically. But there's other things that you can do. I know I've done safety in the Air Force my last 8.5 years. And then I worked at an apartment community doing somewhat of it, but not a whole lot. And in all my days, you see people removing the guards on these table saws like this, for example, just to be able to cut a smaller piece of wood. You got it, but then they never put it back on for anything when they're cutting larger wood and stuff. So in a temporary situation, you'd have hard pressed way of having the sight me, because I am technically preventing myself from being contacted within that point of operation. So you want to always make sure that the safeguards are in place, protecting from falling objects as well. Um, and you lessen the amount of hazards that you are technically exposed to. In a lot of cases, what you're going to see is people having to remove the guards to lubricate the equipment or repair it or something other, and fail to lock it out because they're only going to be doing it for a few minutes and nobody's going to be around. Um, so there's where you're going to run into some of the issues and stuff. And we've already talked about this in general a little bit. Guards are very important. And by the way, this particular piece of equipment did not have a guard, and they built this guard to satisfy that requirement of protecting the people and stuff. So you can always modify it. Under the general requirements, this is where the big wording is at, talking about the point of operation. All right? And as you can see, the standard does allow for special tools and other things as long as a person's hand or body part is not within the danger zone and stuff. So keep that in mind. I tell folks all the time, apply good common sense. Um, well, there are some folks that may not have any, and to be honest with y'all, I'm not picking on y'all. I'm picking on my own big brother, the oldest of us. He didn't have a lick of common sense. He couldn't change the spark plug in a car, but he can sit there and read the manual on that car and tell you every sentence that that manual said, but he couldn't go out there and replace a spark plug on a car. Some people are missing a little bit of that, so that's just a little joke, not offending anyone. All right, here's a fan, and under this particular section, it addresses a fan and the hazards that are associated with old military fan right here. You don't see many of these anymore to start with. Something I do want to point out to everyone, though, some folks will go out and buy these box fans, like for your window, and you bring it to the job site. It's got the little grills in it and stuff. I hate to tell you this, but the cord coming off of that is only a two-prong cord. Means it doesn't have a ground pin. Now, you need to look out for those because you don't have a ground pin, and if this is used in any type of wet location or anything, you can be cited here as well. Now, does anybody identify a hazard here? On the left photo first. All right, let's see. No guards, absolutely. Exposed to rotating parts. Everybody's hitting the nail on the head. But originally, this was not put in where these shelves were at. The fan had been there all along since the building was built. But now they built some shelves, put in there. Now folks are getting close to that point of operation. And there's where the hazards exist. Here is another example right here, one of these old fans. And they set it up on the side of this here little cart to where they can take it around. But the requirement of the standard is very clear, no more than a ½ inch. There's little tools that you can take. Thank you, Keith. That's what I was trying to think of, a house fan. It's not an industrial fan. And Clara also caught the fire extinguisher being in the way right there, too. You guys are on the ball this morning for it to be a Thursday. Now, here's a typical fan that you may see guards on and stuff, but watch out for these in your workplace because they don't have a ground. Here, fixed equipment. This is particularly a drill press. If you look real close down here, this is not screwed down to the floor. Now, what's the hazard with it? What would y'all take? Well, Deborah got it. Walking equipment and tipping over. You're absolutely right. If somebody's up here cutting something and they're pressing down on it really hard and it loses the balance, it's going to flip right over. And the first instinct of an individual has is to try to grab this part of it, and then they turn around and injure their backs as well. Yes, they have to, Julie, your answer to that question, they have to be commercial type with 3 prongs. But here's where you can get a serious back injury also as well, because it's not anchored down. Here's another piece of equipment. You'll notice where the controls are located on here. They're nowhere near the equipment to where you can't get up there to put yourself in that point of operation. We did have some photos where the switch was up here right next to this particular circular saw, radial arm saw that's being used in this particular photo. And here's another example. You can see this right here on this radial arm saw. It's equipped with a automatic guard to protect people. It slides up out of the way as people are cutting and stuff. Now we're under the woodworking equipment. And the standard, as it walks through there, it doesn't address a lot of the newer equipment out there. And we go back to the fence right here for the table saw. You will notice that it's there, but I was actually on this inspection, and it wasn't in place. And so we asked the folks, where's the guard to it? So the guy, it was hanging on the side of the wall. And the reason these are used, when you're cutting some larger types of pieces of equipment and everything, it's to prevent the wood on the opposite side of the blade from mashing the blade, and you'll get that burn smell on the back side of the blade because of it. So you got a spreader bar there, but you also got the overhook. And on the front of these here, they have what we call non-kickback fingers or dogs. And what happens there is it keeps the material from flying back like this and striking an individual that's behind there as well. The problem with people with these table saws and everything is many times they'll take the guard off and they just never put it back on there. And we find this time and time again throughout different industries because a lot of people use the saws and stuff. Now, here is the point of operation. Some pieces of equipment like this particular saw has it marked in red. So anytime you get near that red, you know you're entering the point of operation. Now, this has got a nice hood and everything, but it wasn't being used. So again, here's a saw. What do you see with the issue in this particular saw? I'm going to test y'all's knowledge. Anybody see anything? You got to look hard. I actually had an injury with someone on a saw like this. And no, not really the exhaust, Michael. No, Susan says no guard on the back. Well, actually, Keith, where is it missing? You said the guards are missing. All right, come on, look real hard. I'm making y'all work a little bit today. All right, I'm gonna give it away near the blade side, by the handle. Nope. Here it is right here. The bottom of this section, there is no cover along this blade. So the cover is gone. And so this is all exposed right here. Yep, Mr. Will, it should float as you're cutting the material. You got that right. So when you really look hard at stuff, you happen to catch it and stuff. So good point. And there's the guard on this particular one that was pointed out a little bit ago. All right, radial arm saws. I'm not going to read all these to you because you can download these from our website and everything, but here's the requirements behind it. Now, here's a bandsaw again. Let me back up. That's a good question, Lil. Whenever the saw blade is cutting, the exhaust for it, all the wood chips are sent out this direction from that right there. Many times it will be on the back side, going out towards the back side of it. We have seen there are some out there that has it on the front side and it tilts out. So that's a good question. It's not a dumb question. But anyway, you want to make sure they're in place as well, because you don't want objects being projected out towards the people. Little wood chips and everything, because that can cause issues with eye protection and other things. Now, I will say you need to be careful whenever you're using a bandsaw, because if you try to cut too much material at one time on that one cut, that thing will kick back on you and hit you. And don't think it won't. I've had one almost a couple of times do that to me, except for the guards were in place and it stopped it. Now, here's that bandsaw. Again, we're talking about the point of operation. So they need to fix this to where it slides up and down properly. Now, here's a joiner. I don't know if many of you know what a joiner is, but you slide the piece of stock down here, and this is a blade underneath this cover, and it goes the width of this here, and that thing is as sharp as a razor, or else it wouldn't do such a good job. You need to make sure this is in place, because it moves out of place whenever the material is going through there, but as soon as it ends, it flips back around. Many times people will take these off and won't put them back on there. And then somebody's walking by there and they run their hand across it, and all of a sudden they got cuts on their fingers for it and stuff. Here's a good thing for Lil as well. Here's the ventilation system. It circles around and goes into a big one and then goes out to the wood area. Now, what's the issue inside these shops like this? Can anybody think of hazards associated with these types? Mr. Will beat you to it, Tyler, Jermaine, combustible dust. We will always have a shop, have a wood shop especially, have some buildup of dust. At the point that it may reach a hazard is a very fine line, because it's going to depend on the type wood you're cutting and a lot of other factors before you'll actually have a combustible atmosphere for that dust. But they have ventilation systems in there, but you can still see you still have dust build up in an area. So maintenance of the area, clean it up and everything. And by the way, do not get an air hose and hose your stop down and blow it out. I know some of y'all may see that, but that's a violation of the standard, because now you're putting the dust into the atmosphere as you're blowing it down, and plus you can't use more than 30 psi and to blow anything off. And the standard specifically says you can't use that to blow anyone off. And I'm sure some of y'all may have seen people doing that, but there's reasons behind not doing it, because you can inject air underneath your skin by accident. Now, here's a disc sander. Where would the dangerous point of operation be on this particular thing? Can anybody think about it? They're all exposed, Tony, but Mr. Tyler's got the right answer. It's on the side, because this blade is revolution this direction. So the dangerous part is right along here. And believe me, you need to be extremely careful. Many people will wear gloves when they're using this here machine, because if you touch that with your hand or something, it's going to take the skin off, because it's sanding this stuff down. But a glove can get caught right there and pull your finger into it. And you may not be able to find that control switch when you're up there, got your finger about ready to go through that piece of equipment. So you need to pay attention and make sure people are using the correct type of push sticks or other things to prevent this from happening. Now here's a large belt sander, same thing. Now this is a modification though to the nip point is what we call it. It rotates this direction. All right, and I just want to point that out. What these folks did, there wasn't a guard available for it. What they did was they built a guard. They put a piece of plexiglass over the area and left enough space at the bottom down here to where they can actually put the material through there, whatever they need to sand. and stuff. It's a good way of doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, abrasive grinding wheels. I will tell y'all right now, to me, I cannot believe this is one of the top 10 that things are being cited for. And people just do not get this. Whenever they are using it, the work rest cannot be more than 1/8 of an inch. How do you think we prove exposure here? I mean, if it's just sitting there and nobody's using it, how would we be able to prove exposure if nobody's using it? Of course, I was in a site where somebody said they weren't using it when it was adjusted, but then we walked back through that area, and sure enough, they were standing there using it. Carla said, ask the operator. What we're going to do is ask the employees in the area and stuff, basically. But somebody else noticed something else that's missing on here, too. I thought that's what you meant. There's something else missing on here, too. Anybody see what's missing on the top? It's coming up in a slide, but I just want to let everybody know. How about the tongue guard? That definitely becomes an issue on this now. Here's the work rest, and it will be measured, as you can see. And by the way, on these, sometimes people take these covers off. It's coming up on a slide, but I'll beat you to the gun. And when this is exposed, that's an additional citation and stuff as well. So make sure, what I tell folks to remind people, because when we go out there and we ask the employees what do they adjust it to, most of them can't remember it. And I'll be honest with you, I have my own senior moments quite a bit, lately especially. Yep, Tony, you knew what I was going to say. Post it on the piece of equipment. Say the work rest has to be 1/8 of an inch, and the tool rest has to be 1/4 of an inch. And this is a good example of what we're talking about. These are two of the most common things written up in the standard: the work rest and the tongue guard. And the tongue guard can't be more than 1/4 of an inch away. I have yet to ever see where someone was seriously hurt here. But I have to caution you. You need to be sure people are not going out there buying the cheaper abrasive wheels that may have come from other countries and everything and do not meet certain specifications. And Tyler pointed out they have a little gauge. That's another good way of doing it. And that's what I mean by good ideas. Y'all have done this long enough to be able to determine what's good and what's not. If you need help with it, at that point you can contact our consultative service folks to come out and assist you with your question and answer stuff that you need. So they're there to help you. You can request them to come out and do a focus inspection, or just come out and do a shop inspection, or you can ask them to come out and look at your training programs to see if they're adequate or not. That's your options. As I am as well with being with the ETTA. You can invite us out to come up with some training for your folks, because sometimes people get tired of hearing you say the same thing all the time, and then we can come out there and take a look and help you out on it. And here's that other photo and stuff that we were talking about. Bench and floor, they have to be secured, and all of them have to have this protective cover over there as well. And the reason for that is to prevent those particles from being thrown out of there when it breaks. Now, testing the wheel is one way to do it. You can tap on the side of it, and if you hear like click, click, king, a little cling, you might be able to hear. I can't hear that myself. I've tried. In fact, that's my hand in this photo, because we staged this photo. But you do need to be sure people are, the thing you got to be sure of is making sure that they're putting the correct RPMs on that particular grinder, because many times it's not, and there's where you can get some serious injuries. How many of you own one of those little Drumble tools that you can put the little cut blades on there? cutting blades on there, the little Drumble tools, those little, I'm trying to think of the name on them, but many people use those for cutting sheetrock. Yeah, there you go, cutting sheetrock and everything. If you ever put a little wheel on one of those right there and try to cut a nail or something with it, what do you think happens? It blows off of it because you're trying to cut it too fast. It wasn't made that way. And that's a good example of what can happen in these particular situations as well. But a lot of it is due to RPMs and other issues or cheap graining wheels as well. The standard also addressed foot pedals, and it does address to be sure it can't be accidentally activated by someone. So you need to make sure these have a cover on the top of them. Most of them have a cover on the top to where you put your foot in there to push the pedal down. That way if somebody's walking along, they don't accidentally activate that piece of equipment and stuff. Now, we don't have any real good pictures of mechanical power presses right now, but these are some of the requirements that the people are required to follow. Keep away from the point of operation. That's the main thing we're telling everyone. Some job sites I've been with a compliance officer, what they have done was got little devices that they can use to reach inside the piece of equipment, because if you're punching away on something or another, you may not have enough time to be able to reach in there and grab it, but they got a tool you can use to reach in there and grab it. And in fact, there was a job site where these folks made bottles, and they had a whole row of bottles where on the other side, I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to draw it out. It was interesting. That was before we could use the photos and stuff. All right, this is where the individual would stand. These were little arms coming off here, and this row was where the bottles were at. And these little arms would go up and down, but sometimes the bottle would be stuck a little bit, and the employee would have to reach inside and tap that. What do you think they came up with to prevent him from being exposed to a hazard? Now, this is almost a foot away. He had to reach in there and tap the top of it to break the bottle loose from the machine. Oh, Susan, you're on the right track. Jermaine is also. He had a reach stick, but the problem was these stuck out in the walk area. So the compliance officer was feeling that he needed to cite them in this particular situation for unguarded stuff. But during the course of the interviews and everything else, they have never had an employee in 40-something years be injured. This is how old that equipment was, because he used a little reach stick to reach inside, but he was right next to where it was going up and down all along. But there was no abatement that could be done in order to prevent that. And because of the fact they never had a accident, would not give them justification to be able to cite that. So there wasn't a whole lot we can do. But again, we're talking about pull-out devices and other things being used. And also make sure that sometimes when you lock a press out, or if the power goes off, what will take place, it may continue through that revolution because there's springs and other things inside of it and everything. So you need to be sure it's completely locked down when folks are doing that, for the lockout tagout more than anything else. But some people just forget about it and don't pay a bit of mind to it. I'm going to send you all a link right now that will help you with a lot of good information in there, because it's got PowerPoints, it's got some manuals in here. It also talks about the requirements behind present sensing devices and stuff. And this is the link. So if you're using any types of those lasers or anything, be sure to have that. This is the page that you can get a lot of information off the federal website, in addition to some PowerPoints as well. And of course, y'all can download ours as well. So use this information, and believe it or not, we can't use the federal PowerPoints for ours, so we're kind of stuck with having to collect our own. So anyway, be sure there are people using these. Make sure that they're using any type of devices properly. Anytime you're putting an element of relying on the employee to adjust it properly, may be setting yourself up for a situation of a failure. And a lot of people don't realize that. Oops, went a little bit too far. Here's a good example. Now, if the flywheel, like in that fan for that ventilation system a little earlier, was over 7 feet, it would not present a hazard. Therefore, we wouldn't be able to cite it. This is actually an old air compressor that was on a site that they were using, and they didn't guard it. Could this be guarded? What's y'all's take? Could this be guarded? All right. Yeah, absolutely. There's a way of guarding it when it's in use. So just keep that in mind. Now, here's where we get into the shafts and other things a little bit as far as hazards. This is where it's accessible to the employee because it's below 7 feet. Joe, you mentioned about using an old grocery cart. Technically, you can't use that because the holes are too big. A person could put their finger in there. Remember that half-inch deal a little earlier. But if these are below 7 feet, they're not required. And a lot of these you may also see on garage doors up at the top. That's technically not a violation because it's over that 7 feet that nobody can get to. Now, this is a good case of where people can get to shafts and other things. This is a blown up picture of it, but it's right here in this one. Now, keep in mind the material was coming down this way on the conveyor belt, so a person would have to go over here and pick up all this material. Now he's being exposed to a hazard. There's where we would typically talk to the workers and find out what's really going on and stuff. So now here's another one on pulleys and other stuff. You can see the pulley right here, and it's very clear that they guarded it on above it, but they didn't guard it. Well, they guarded right side. You can see the mesh in here. I don't want to write over it and you can't see it. But they didn't guard this side of it. And we were asking, do people go on that side? And almost every one of the employees we talked to that work in that area, of course, they're always getting over here. So it doesn't meet the requirement of the standard. There are ways of so it doesn't meet the requirement of the standard. There are ways of modifying equipment to where you can fix that to where if you need some advice, you can contact us and we can give you as much advice that we can help you assess that. And Leo mentioned something else about the tripping hazard over here. That's a good point because when people are walking over here, there's a tripping hazard as well. Thanks for sharing it. Now we're getting into belt motions and other things. The equipment has got to be guarded. This is self-explanatory. This is the inward nip point, and this is considered a nip point as well. So you got two different things that you need to cover the blade with. And this is the perfect example of what we're talking about. And typically, folks had to get into this area. You got several deficiencies is what I'm trying to say. Here, you got one here, and you got one here, and then you got another one way over here. So this was not evaluated, and people were not protected. You also had another one right up here. So there's numerous things that you can do to help protect your people on these types of situations. Here's another one that talks about sprockets and oops, went forward too fast. Sorry. Other things like here, this is on a sawmill. for example, and this one was too. But people were able to get to it, so it generated a hazard because it was less than 7 foot. Um, and here's what we're talking about. Now, this was drawn to give you an example of a shaft sticking out with a little screw on it. If you have one of those, it has to be guarded, because if that screw catches your shirt or anything at pants, it can wrap around here and actually injure you as well. The other thing, I point this out at this time because a lot of people aren't aware of it, but there's a how many of y'all have ever rode one of those carts, not golf carts, go karts on a go kart track at a amusement place? Has anybody ever did that? Ah, Julie says, yeah. Okay, several of you have. There was a lady at the one here in Raleigh that she got on it, and she was racing her kids around there and everything, and her hair was so long that it went into the spindle on the motor on the backside. You know what I'm talking about. Um, and got caught in there and actually ripped her hair out on the back of her head. And that's what we're kind of talking about right here. Oh, really? Judy just shared something. Oh, wow. Uh, in the military, we actually had a Marine helicopter come into the Air Force Base because of an emergency situation. And the lady that was going to repair it, now this is the helicopter um, blades. And let's see if I can't draw this. All right, this is the helicopter. I ain't bad drawing like this. She had to get up here on top and work on this mechanism right here that turns the blades, and her hair got caught up in it, and it ripped her scalp off on the left-hand side, and we had to go out there and investigate it for the Marines because they didn't have anybody nearby to investigate. And we determined that her hair was not put up correctly to keep her from getting caught in that spinning blade. Now, the blades weren't spinning, just the shaft was spinning because the blades were off. But that's a situation that takes place. And again, here's that requirement for the thing. Now, what do y'all see wrong with this saw? Yes, Robert, you're absolutely right. She didn't follow the regulations. That wasn't our issue, though, because she wasn't up for us. What do y'all see in this saw that the blade's not retracting down? Absolutely, Jermaine. You picked that one right up. Many times people using these blades will stick the blade up because they can make it a lot easier to cut finer material and everything. But then they set the blade down and all of a sudden it goes running off on the job site. There's a couple of funny videos on YouTube that you can see. And you can note that a piece of wood was stuck up here in order to prevent it, but the guard should fit all the way around to protect the people whenever this is being used and go back down and stuff. So make sure your switches and other things, like on this, once I press that switch, it comes on. When I release the switch, it goes the other direction. Same way on these. Now, in this case, this drill is one that you can push with a constant pressure switch as well. There is a belt sander where this is where it's revolution going this way, and that's considered a nip point right here. You're not always going to be able to guard it, but you need to make sure people are aware of it, especially on these hand sanders and stuff like this. I actually run over my finger one time using one of these. Kind of got away from me a little bit. I want to back up a minute because it's not in this presentation. All right, this particular drill, and I want to point this out to everyone, it's only a two-prong drill. Can anybody tell me what the drill is required to have in that case? Double insulated. Yay! Absolutely, you're correct. You can use it but it has to be a double insulated tool, and it's got to be identified as well. So it's got to be marked on there. Typically, you're going to find a mark on a handle or on the, the wording in that little section right there um, as well. Now, we see this for pneumatic tools all the time. A hose clamp down on a piece of equipment. Does this present a hazard? Let me ask you this first. And what would the hazard be? We're doing some hazard identification towards the end of this. Uh, cut hazard? Well, uh, flying, yes. Come loose. All right. Deborah kind of pointed it out a little bit. Cut hazard. I got everybody. It was actually cut, and they put a hose clamp on here. And typically, some of these air hoses will range up to 100 and 150 psi. It varies a little bit. If that hose clamp pops off of there, it will whip you like your mother. Well, my mother used to whip us with switches or belt or anything. Today, that would be called child abuse. But let me tell you, that hose is flying, and it will also, the sound of the air coming out of there can almost bust your eardrums as well. So you don't want to see these anywhere, especially under hydraulic machines that have the oil pressure and stuff in them, because it can be very dangerous to almost anyone around there, because it can whip around and strike others. And all it's got to do is strike them in the wrong place, and they can lose an eye or something, because it can disconnect. It wasn't designed like that, so you need to make sure that you're using it correctly. Now, I have had tons of questions on me. Where do we get these lines fixed? There are companies that will fix these lines and put their standard clip back on there. If the hose is still good, because if we show up out there and we see that the hose is bad and you got a clamp on there, why are you using it? It's going to end up costing you $7,000. Now, that's before penalty reductions, but still yet it can be cited. It was not designed for that piece of equipment. Either way, even if we dropped it to the lowest amount, that would still be $100 citation. And if you get a repeat violation within 3 years here in North Carolina, you don't get any penalty reductions on it. So keep that in mind. Now, here's a vertical portable grinder, and as you can see, the guard's missing on it. Typically, there's like a half guard on there, and you always want to adjust that guard to where the material are being slung out that direction. And many people don't realize it's got to be protected and stuff as well. Now, here's one that's got the proper guard on it. And the other one, I have seen people use this as a wood saw in some cases, because they make a blade for them as well. Now you're presenting even a bigger hazard. So, all right, and as you can see, that this is the correct way of having it done and everything. So, all right, I think I'm almost done. Now, we haven't covered a lot of the other stuff that is out there. So I want to go back and I want to repeat to everybody that it's very important that you make sure your people are using the tools and stuff correctly. Because if they're not using it correctly, then you're a contributing person for not identifying it as a hazard to folks. And there is so many people that when someone is hurt on a job site, it affects everyone. It's not just one person. Because you may have knew the person indirectly or had conversations with the person and other things like that, and then all of a sudden you see that they're not able to do the job anymore, or even come back, or die as a result of it. I was just reading right before I logged on. We just had a fatality where an individual forklift turned over and he was crushed under the forklift. And I just thought to myself, how many things and how many times we have had to tell folks to wear their seatbelt when you're in that piece of equipment. Um, but people do not listen. So now we have another fatality here in North Carolina as a result of that. Um, Unfortunately, we can't stop certain ones, but you can certainly get out there and take care of the situations and stuff. Will, I can't actually tell anybody right now because I'm on the primary list for notification, um, but it will be posted on our website. You can go to our website. Has any of y'all been to our website? I'm questioning that because you can go on our website and look at the fatalities that we've had in North Carolina, and you can even determine where it happened. Oh, everybody's saying yes on here. I'm looking back now, thinking maybe I don't need to show anyone. Yeah, Julie, we're still missing some presentations and stuff, but we're slowly working on. That's the reason I'm asking y'all to invite me out to um, your facility so we can get some good photos. Now, I will tell you that here's my information again, and here's the link to our fatality list in North Carolina as well. Um, that pretty much concludes this presentation. But like I said, if you folks want, get me out there. I'll buy you lunch that day or something. And like I said, you folks can review the photos before I leave the site, and you can tell me to take out what you don't want. And that would be between us. And I cannot pick up the phone and call compliance no matter what I've seen on the site, because that would break the trust that you put in me by inviting me out there. But we are trying to improve the presentations and stuff. So your help would be welcome as well. And if we do see something that's not right, all I can do is just tell you about it. Um, Actually, Deborah, that's a little bit longer situation than what we have for time-wise. But if you go to the standard, some folks, let me see. Um, Remember, this is general industry standard that we're talking about right here. And what Deborah's talking about is, I'm going to bring it up for everybody. Let's see if I can do that. Um, 42. The 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 section, there is a letter of interpretation on this particular section, and I'm going to copy this and put it in here so everybody knows this. And here's basically what that particular standard number that Deborah just pointed out says, and it addresses the PSI on there. Now, the letter of interpretation, I'm going to send you the link on that just so you're aware of it. And there's two letters of interpretation on there, and I can't send both, but I can give you the one. And this first one deals with blowing a person off with air. And that's the main thing you need to be aware of more than anything else. And Deborah pointed out before I could get around to it was that even blowing your material and stuff off, you have to have a device on there to reduce the pressure to less than 30 psi. Some shops, there is a variance in some cases throughout the United States and stuff, and we also listed on there is a variance, and the discussion behind the variance. There's a standards, or I'm sorry, OSHA instruction STD thing, and I'm going to send y'all, crap, I just messed that up. Hang on a minute. I got to go back to it again. My page closed on me. Dang, my finger's a little bit too big right now, and I can't. All right, let's see. Do this one more time. This dates back to 1985. Dang, I just did it again, believe it or not. I got this new mouse I'm using, and it's kind of funny that I haven't got used to it yet. All right, now I got it. I think I got it. Yes, this is. Um, there's also a variance on there. I'm having a problem right now. The federal site won't let me bring it up, but anyway, I'm reading a couple of comments because I was trying to bring that up for you. Julie, I really wish I can too. You can Google that online and actually see some of those. A lot of folks don't want us to, well, we don't put graphic photos in our presentations because it's a little sickening to certain people. But to be honest with you, what can occur as a result of air being shot into or blown off by a person? There are numerous things that can actually take place. One of which is injecting the air under the skin. And if that happens, now you're acceptable to infections and other things. But another hazard when people don't think about it is whenever you're blowing yourself off, if you get up near your eardrums or your eye with compressed air, you can bust your eardrum or damage your eyes as a result of it as well. So those are the specific reasons you don't want to do that. Angela just put a comment, I know. Who? Angela. I was just reading your note. Really? That's just not good. Wow. But I will be honest with you folks, years ago, that I know folks blowed themselves off quite a bit, especially cutting in a woodworking environment where you create a lot of dust. And also some people will blow themselves off when they're doing concrete work and everything to blow the dust off them and everything. Now, let me ask you this. I'm testing y'all right here. What's the hazard if you start blowing concrete dust all around? Absolutely. Now we are putting silica into the atmosphere. And do we now have a silica standard? Yeah, everybody's got that right. I highly encourage everybody to I just caught, I want to go back. Tony mentioned that it's okay if they put safety glasses on. It's not okay at any time. That would still be a violation of the standard for them to blow themselves off. It does not matter the case or where, but a lot of people think that. So you need to teach them that. Deborah brought up a message, a link a few minutes ago, but when I'm scrolling through here, sometimes I can't catch all of them. She brought up the letter of interpretation. All right, thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. All right, folks, that pretty much concludes this presentation. And I did put my information up there if you'd like to give me a call or talk to me a little bit more on any of the subjects and stuff. You are more than welcome to do so. Yes, Carl, that hexavalent chromium is a special emphasis in North Carolina as well. And by the way, y'all may receive a comment or email about responding, telling us how well I did for an evaluation or something. Great comments. We enjoy getting those from you folks and stuff. Gives us a little pat on the back and stuff. And don't forget, my open invitation to anyone out there is to get lunch. I can buy you lunch, but you can't buy me lunch. So please go ahead and sign off. Unless there's somebody with another question or something. Whew. This used to be a real long presentation because of the photos we had. All right, folks, we will see y'all in the future. We'll be doing some more webinars. Our supervisor just hadn't got them posted yet and stuff. Y'all take care.